My name is Lillian Anderson. My maiden name was Fife, and I've been involved in Pearce Williams as a camper, a counselor, a board chair, and lots of ways all through the years. Not quite as far back as 60, but in the 60s. My husband John and I live in St. Thomas, and we've been here for going on 40 years in our house. So I'm a retired elementary school teacher. I've been retired for 5 years, but I spent my whole career working first for Elgin County Board of Education and later for Thames Valley District School Board. Always primary, grade 1, 2, or 3, or a combination thereof. I would say I probably started going as a camper in the mid 60s. So I'm thinking around 1965 as a counselor, or as a camper, sorry. Then I worked as a counselor from 1972 to 1975. And then I became involved with the board level in the mid 80s, around 1985. And I worked largely with Don McPherson when he was there at a board level. And then Maya later on when she came. And then I became the chair of the board. And in fact, I was on the committee that hired you. So we were just discussing that. That was in 2005. So somewhere between 85 and 2005, I guess you could say I was involved in the board level. I think fun-loving, I'd have to say. Because when I think of camp, it's always a pleasant, enjoyable experience for me. And I would think that's what we would want for all of our campers when they come. I mean, there may be a few moments here and there where it's not so fun, depending on what's going on, but I would think that a pleasant, fun-loving experience is what I would use to describe my time there. I come from a family of farmers and teachers, so I opted for teaching. I have one younger sister, and I always tease her that I'm the reason she learned how to read before she went to school, because I forced her to be the student. When there's only 2 kids on the farm, you know what that's like. You make your own fun. And I've always was involved in church things. I taught Sunday school. I'm the oldest of 18 cousins, so I did a lot of babysitting for my cousins, and I had a standing Friday night babysitting job for the family up the road, who at that point had 4 girls. They had a 5th girl after I started dating and went on to that. So for me, working at Pearce was a really good background into teaching. It was a great segue, and I still used many of the things that I learned, like skits and songs and all kinds of things, with my class at school, particularly when we would go on outdoor education things, and I would have the kids singing different songs and doing something. And I've had a couple of mothers actually say, could we rent you out for birthday parties, because this is great.
That's awesome.
I think once you establish those routines and learn those skills, they stay with you no matter where you go or what you do, to a certain extent. And it's great. It was great experience and training for parenthood as well. And now that my husband John and I are grandparents, it's even useful for us now. I was given the opportunity to go to a leadership camp that I don't believe is even in existence anymore. It was called Bark Lake Leadership Camp, and I went there. And I remember it was through Pearce that I got to go there, and it was I'm not sure if it was 2 weeks.
18 days is what it was.
It was a considerable amount of time, and I remember it being in the Halliburton Highlands, and I remember my parents driving me up and dropping me off. and I didn't know a soul at this camp. And I remember looking at my mom and dad as they drove out the driveway thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to last for this amount of time? And I think my dad was as apprehensive as I was. And when they came back at the end of this to pick me up, I'd had such a great experience that I did not want to leave. And I think a lot of times kids have that same experience at camp, although at Pearce it's usually a week or less than a week. I do remember always being so tired when I finished as a camp counselor and going home, and you basically washed your clothes, ate some good home cooking that mom made, and slept for, a good period of time. And I think the other thing, my relationships that I made with staff and I was going to say students, with campers. I mean, I run into a few of them even now. One of my former campers happens to be the receptionist in the doctor's office that we dealt with just the other day when John went to have surgery. And, she remembered me and called me Lil right off the bat, like, as if no time had passed. Mm-hmm. So I think that's neat. And I still get together, not as often as I would like with some of the people that I worked with at Pearce. Yeah. I'm not even sure what it's called officially, but it's about way down the road, not so very far off, a blue jay died of the whooping cough.
It is called Way Down the Road.
Okay, there you go. The mind goes when you're a little older here, but and I used that, for years and years and years after camp at school. And, it's just amazing to me how quickly you can bring kids from like way up here with the loud down to just a whisper voice. And those are some of the skills I was talking about that you learn and you carry with you. Not necessarily the song, but the idea behind it. I think it would be to be a little more adventurous and try new things. I am not a techie person at all. So even doing this little exercise with you here right now, you got to be a lifelong learner. You got to keep moving forward. So try those new things. So what if you fail? If you never try, you're always going to fail. Probably be yourself. And I think that goes a little bit back to what I was just saying about being adventurous and, try new things. If you don't try, you'll never learn. So I had a lot of great mentors at camps. Many of them are no longer with us. My friend Joan Silcox and her husband John Smith, who are both ministers now, and we referred to John as Smitty in my time. They actually got married at Pearce Williams out on Vesper Point. And I don't know, there used to be, I'm not sure if it's still there or not, a picture in the chapel with the cross in the background, and both of them.
It is not in the chapel anymore. It is hanging in upstairs in the farmhouse. We have a wall of things we don't know where to hang. And so we just hang them because the farmhouse is only for staff.
Okay.
And so we literally take anything where we're like, and we throw it up on the wall upstairs so our staff can see it.
The day of that wedding, Joan lived and grew up in Frome. And so we were all there at her parents' house in Frome getting ready. And it was supposed to be an outdoor wedding. And there was like a torrential downpour that day. And I can remember Joan's mom, Carol Silcox, kind of wringing her hands and saying, I knew we should have had a backup plan. I knew we should have had a backup plan. And Joan saying, Mom, it's going to be okay. Just relax. I know it's going to be okay. So we get in the cars and we're heading west. And as we're driving west, the rain stopped, the sun came out, and we were able to have that wedding out at Pearce Williams on Vesper Point. and the ushers were frantically wiping down chairs that had been set out there. So, you know, if you believe in something hard enough, I guess that it'll happen. I'm very much of an escapist reader, especially right now. I don't want to deal with the reality. There's too much of that at the moment. So I tend to read a lot of kind of what I would call girly fiction. It's sort of the equivalent of a chick flick in a book. And so one of my favorite authors is Debbie McComber, and another one is Cheryl Woods, and a third one is Robin Carr. And the reason I like those readers is all of their books are based on families or communities. So when you read one book, the characters tend to carry over in between. And so one time you're reading about this character and their experiences, and the next time you're reading about a different one, but you hear some of the other ones. So it kind of goes back to that relationship thing we talked about earlier. One that really needs to talk to you is Murray Barnett. He's the minister who was there during my whole tenure working there. He and his wife June were the first actual directors or year-round coordinators. I'm not even sure what the term was back then. I think Murray has a wealth of information, particularly from the early years, shall we just say. And I think if you didn't get that, that would be a real loss. So he would be one. And my other friend, Joan Silcox Smith, who is currently living in Sauble Beach with her husband, John. And John would also be a great informant in something like this. Joan is working, she's actually officially retired as a chaplain for, she was at Princess Margaret and I think Mount Sinai. I can't tell you the exact hospitals, but in Toronto. And now I believe she's working in Owen Sound in a similar capacity. So I think those would be two people who have a wealth of information to share. I'm just going to say one other thing, and this is a little bit of a plug. John and I have financially supported Pearce Williams on an ongoing basis through PAR, just the same as we do with our church, because it gave me such great skills and times. And I would encourage any alumni or otherwise to consider doing a similar thing for Pearce. It doesn't have to be a lot of money, but just that commitment and literally putting your money where your mouth is and helping out, I'm sure would be welcome.